Orange Zone, sponsored by Apex Entertainment.
To be here. On this panel tonight, we have our very own Rachel Culver, Ashley Wenskoski, and of course, SU running back and Super Bowl champion, James Monroe. So thanks for being here, James, as always. We're going to talk about a couple different things tonight, including SU football's win over Clemson, Steve Angeli's season-ending injury, Rickie Collins, who's taking over in his place, and the ACC issuing some fake injury fines. Going to take a beat on that as well. But first, we're going to start with that Clemson win because it was a big win for the program, and we actually haven't heard Monroe's thoughts yet on it.
Yeah, it was a hell of a win for the program. I mean, it's very, very simple. The kids went out there, they balled the whole game. The energy level was high. They were in a hostile environment, and they literally put it to them. I mean, they literally put it to Clemson.
I mean, can we take a second? It was 34-21. No one expected that.
Yeah, I think what an appropriate time to have this as our first live podcast, because this week almost feels like a turning point for Syracuse football this season in a way, right? A third of the season over, you're 3-1, which is better than I think many fans hoped for heading into this week. But at the same time, it's bittersweet. You just lost your starting quarterback.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, to start, you said bittersweet. We'll talk about the sweet part. Who would have thought that at this point in the season we would be halfway to a bowl game? There was a time, quite honestly, a couple weeks ago, Monroe included, I might add, where we were sitting down at this table thinking that it was possible that Syracuse might not make a bowl game. Let's be honest.
Yeah, we heard a little bit about you being pretty doubtful heading into this Clemson game. Is that true?
Yes, I was. I'm not going to lie. I didn't think they were going to win. I mean, I just didn't think they had it in them to go down to a very hostile environment and pull a W out. And they totally proved me wrong, and I'm the first person to admit my mistakes. But normally I don't bet on the orange. I mean, I normally do not bet on the orange. I normally bet on the orange, but this time, you know, I thought Clemson was going to pull it out. But again, you just never know. It's any day, anything could happen. And you know, literally, they outcoached Clemson. They outplayed Clemson to every magnitude possible. And you know, now Clemson's looking in the mirror and wondering what their team's about. And we're on a high note.
Yeah, and I want to talk about something specific in that Clemson game because I want to get your thoughts on it. Of course, it's the first time Syracuse has ever won in Death Valley. They've beaten Clemson 2 times before, but the first time they've ever won at that venue. What did you think about the onside kick from that decision from Fran Brown and his staff to start off that game?
That was amazing. That was very, very smart on his part and the coaching staff to really honestly execute that very, very well. I mean, it was perfectly done. Clemson was not thinking about it at all. I mean, none of us were thinking about it. I know I damn sure wasn't. Until he did, I'm like, oh, that's the best call possible to make at that time. And the boys were just fired up. They were just fired up and they were ready to play. And they went down there to prove themselves, and I think they proved themselves.
I actually am curious about the onside kick. We see it on TV, and it seems like it just goes over flawlessly. But is that the sort of thing that you're practicing the entire week in practice?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you practice that every week. You practice that anyways, especially through walkthrough. You practice that. Make sure everybody's out there. You know, everyone's accountable. And they executed perfectly. It was a perfect kick. Clemson ran. They did not look to see the ball at all. And that's the whole thing. You know, it's just – normally Clemson doesn't make those type of mistakes, but again, it's not the same Clemson team, and for the past couple of years. It's different, so it's not the same team.
And typically something I think that you see later on in games, right, when you're running out of time, trying to get the ball back. But that was 4 minutes into the game. Syracuse had taken the lead 7-0, and then to make that call, I think just like you said, Syracuse fans were shocked, but also it was a clear signal from Fran Brown and his staff right away that they were playing with urgency, playing to win this game.
Yeah, they weren't playing scared at all, and that's what I like the most about it. They weren't playing scared at all, and they went out there, they executed. They had a game plan. They executed the game plan, and now, you know, next team up. I mean, that's really how you look at it.
I mean, don't you like that, though? I think that when you're going into a place like Death Valley, that was one thing that stuck out to me when we talk about bittersweet. A part of the sweetness for me was the fact that Fran Brown was fearless. I want Syracuse to have the kind of head coach that is completely unafraid to take risks.
Absolutely, and you have to think about where we were at last year with this team. Special teams was such a concern, you know, and that's not something that we've really felt all season. And not only have we not felt it, but we've actually felt really good about special teams. Like, you come off a play like that, and you're like, all right.
Yeah, I mean, the momentum that the momentum already was swung, and now they double down on it. They like literally double down on the momentum, and the fans were shocked. I mean, the whole week they were talking about Clemson's coach in the news, talking about what he has done in the past. But again, that's the past. It's about the future now, baby.
Yeah, Dabo was emotional after the game. Yeah. I think that 1-3 start was not something that anybody had on their bingo card for Clemson this year. But I guess just with that game now in the rear view, and obviously as we keep alluding to, things are different with Rickie Collins coming in. But what was your biggest takeaway from the team as a whole? It can be offensively, defensively, from that game, from that win.
They didn't let the gas pedal off. They had the foot on the gas pedal the whole time. And in the fourth quarter, they still were playing like, they need to score points. And, with the new quarterback going, and we'll talk about them, shortly. But it was just great to see the team play the whole time. And there was no time off at all.
Yeah, to me, it felt like the best win of the Fran Brown era so far. Yeah. The most complete team win, four
Start
quarters
to finish,
of football.
Yes.
Even over Miami.
Yeah. They fell down to Miami 21-0. That wasn't 4 quarters of football. It was a great second half.
Wasn't saying they came back, which is impressive in its own right. But
I think
your opinion's your opinion.
The Syracuse mentality is like so often the comeback, right? You're chasing, you're getting back to it. So that's exciting, and we're used to that feeling. But no, we actually can just get out and have leads and then win.
Right, cardiac juice. Ashley is a Mets fan. She doesn't need more of that.
I need wire-to-wire wins. More of them.
So that's the sweet part. Here were some of the bitter parts. ACC hit Syracuse with a $25,000 fine. And I am curious.
Chump change.
You think so?
That's chump change, for Syracuse, that's chump change.
But here's the other thing. Let's be fair and admit a couple things right off the bat. It is something that happens across college football, and you've seen it in the NFL, so this is not something that's specific to Syracuse. But how do you think that the ACC decides who they're going to fine, and how do you know for sure that this is really something that
you
Syracuse
could be injured as a broken fingernail. How do they determine that? I do not know at all. I just know 2 guys were down, and whenever you see 2 people go down, obviously you want to protect them. But again, yes, it does happen in football, and it happens in all sports, really. And you just got to be smart about it. But they fined us. Like the coach said. He's moving on. It's now about Duke. And I don't blame him, because that's what it's about now. It's not about something old. As happened in the past, this is about the future. So they learned, and hopefully they won't do it again. But if they have to use a $25,000 fine to win a game, then that's what you do. But, again, it didn't determine at all about winning the game or losing the game in that situation.
Yeah, I think this was something that we kind of also had our eyes on for Syracuse even before this happened this week, because in the Tennessee game, there was sort of a similar situation. 2 players went down at the same time. It was Demetrius Samuel Jr. who just fell down. I know there's cramping. There's a lot of things that can happen during a football game. But if you're going to, I guess, do that, it sort of felt a little bit obvious. Do you think that
was
not to accuse anyone?
Yes, I felt that was obvious.
That was some cramp.
Yes.
It was some cramp, and I think that
we jogged off the field afterwards.
Right, and he was fine. He was fine.
Miraculous recovery,
as the announcer said. Miraculous, the broadcasters on the thing. But I also think this was sort of brought to light because Cade Klubnik, the Clemson quarterback, after the game was saying, he was complaining about it. He said every time our offense got a little bit of momentum, we started to move with faster tempo, it seemed like Syracuse was having one of these injury situations, and he literally said, quote, "It's up to them if they want to be honest." And the conference decided that they were going to make Syracuse honest on Monday.
Yeah, but it doesn't feel like the type of thing we would have heard twice about if it wasn't brought up in a post-game press conference.
I had mixed feelings, to be honest, about what Cade said, because at first I'm thinking, is this really the approach that this guy is going to take? You lost. And then the ACC hits him with the fine, and I'm like, wait a minute. And plus Syracuse paid it. So what does that mean?
Pissed.
If
That's
they
what
paid
I thought.
it,
That's what I was thinking.
I hear you on that, and I don't necessarily disagree with that, but Syracuse, let's be fair, would not have paid the fine if they didn't do it. That's at least the way I feel, it's my opinion.
And Fran Brown did not want to talk about it, right? It was, this week he wants to move on. He wants to talk about Duke. But I think it was a good reminder in a way that even Fran Brown has a boss up at Syracuse. You know what I mean? We put out the statement, and we did not want to expand.
So you know what? Maybe we should move on this podcast, too. Speaking of bitter, Steve Angeli had an awesome game against Clemson, really his best game of the entire season. And unfortunately, he is now out for the season. Torn Achilles. We saw the picture come out this week, where he had undergone a successful surgery. And now it's Rickie Collins' time. But I feel like we should take a beat first on Steve Angeli. Ashley, we can start with you. What did you think that you saw from him in that game?
Yeah, I think it's so unfortunate. Obviously, we all feel for Steve Angeli. That's a horrific thing to happen. I mean, I think right away when he went down with the injury, you could tell that it was major. He was in pain. He was not putting weight on that leg. And he actually tweaked that same, he came out of halftime with a brace sort of on that knee. So you knew the trouble was brewing even in the first quarter, although he did pop up after that. I mean, you just feel for the guy, especially when it seemed like he was just starting to hit his stride.
I know.
This Clemson game, he was surgical in the way that he was attacking that Clemson defense. He really looked comfortable. You did not see that hesitation that you had seen in some of the games prior. There were some batted balls, some tip balls at the line of scrimmage from him. You had seen that a few times, and I think that's a problem that he sort of has to overcome in the future moving forward. But he really looked like he was in control of this team and of this offense, and so for that to happen in the third quarter of this game specifically, really a shame for a guy like Steve Angeli. Of course, the silver lining is he expects to have 2 more years of eligibility with the medical red shirt. But to interrupt something, I guess, that he had been preparing for months and months like that, it just sucks.
Prior to the injury, Angeli completed 18 of 31 passes for 244 yards and 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Rachel, you watched that game too. What stuck out to you about his performance in that game, or really just the entire year?
Well, I think it's honestly been a tale of, 4 games for him, right? Like, every game has told us something different about Steve Angeli, but what really stuck out for me was the UConn game. I think that was a situation where not much was going right for a long time, and it was a home game, and you even felt like some of the hometown fans turning against him a little bit, but that whole team dug deep on that game and found a way to win it. And then from there on out, it just seemed like all of the pieces were starting to fall into place more and more. But I think it's those games early where things aren't going right that almost tell you more than when things are going right. So I think if we had seen and had the opportunity to see him complete a whole season, there's room for us to have loved and enjoyed watching him play as much as we loved Kyle McCord for a season. And that's the thing. We do have more years with him, which is such a blessing, but you really felt the fan base start to grow around him, especially in that Clemson game when you're on Twitter and seeing the space that people are in and they're like, oh my gosh, is this real? Like, this is our quarterback. Also leading the nation in passing yards. Who would have thought that would have happened leading into this season? So a lot of what ifs and a lot of sadness for him because, like Ashley said, like the moment you saw that non-contact injury as he's kind of looking for a pass there, you knew it wasn't going to be good. But best of thoughts to him, and now we move forward, right?
And you sort of feel like the whole situation is kind of almost symbolic of what Steve Angeli has had to go through, right? He's at Notre Dame. He does not win the starting job there for 3 years. You know, uproots his life, transfers to Syracuse, comes in here, wins a contested quarterback battle against another really talented guy, learns a whole playbook, you know, gets the coach's trust in 3 months' time and is named the starter, and then something like this happens 4 games in. So I guess it's just another moment of adversity that he'll kind of have to overcome in a way.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, he was growing, and that's the sad part about it was, you know, in the beginning of the season, I'll be honest with you, I didn't know if he would be would finish the season as a starting quarterback. You know,
Matter of fact, Monroe was one of the guys booing in the crowd.
Yeah.
No, I wasn't. But no, I honestly didn't think that he might be the best fit for Syracuse early on. And then it totally, by the last game, Clemson, I said he's our quarterback. He managed the game very well, and the momentum he had growing. And every game he played from the very beginning, he's gotten better. He has gotten better and gotten better. And things have been tough in the very beginning, but he got to the point, you know, in Clemson, and he's a big part why we won that game in Clemson.
I mean, no
totally
doubt.
is.
I think that it is worth acknowledging what Rachel brought up. Like, let's be fair. That UConn game was a very interesting time at the Dome. There were truly people booing, people cheering for Rickie Collins.
Yeah.
Twitter was a mess.
Well, I put out a tweet that game. I was like, once that game ended, I put out a tweet that said, I think some of you owe Steve Angeli an apology. And I got ripped apart.
You got a mixed bag.
I got ripped apart. They're like, respect is earned, not given. I was like, okay.
Never mind.
No, but it's so true. Because by the time that you circled around to the Clemson game, you were like, wow, maybe people should have been a little more
You got
patient.
people
And I
running
get
through
it.
brick walls for the guy now, you know?
Yeah.
Totally.
I mean, that's just the Syracuse mentality, though. You got to love it.
That's so true. And listen, now you move on, and it is Rickie Collins' time, and who knows what to expect here. Obviously, it is bittersweet just in the sense that, man, it really felt like they had some momentum. But I'm just going to throw something out there. We really have no idea what Rickie Collins is capable of, good or bad. We just don't.
And that's the cool thing about it, because the other schools don't know either what he's about.
Right.
And you know, hopefully this young man comes in, steps in. I mean, you got to remember too. I mean, it was a battle for the quarterbacks all the way till the first game. We didn't know who the quarterback was.
Right.
So I mean, the coach has confidence in him because obviously it was a very close battle, and there was no outright winner early on. And now he has a shot. Now he can show the whole world that he should have been the starter in the first place. So hopefully he has that mentality going into this.
One thing I wanted to ask you is, like, now him coming into that role of QB1, how much are his relationships with his receiving core, with the running back? How much has that lagged behind now that he hasn't been in the quarterback role? Well,
he's going to, like, I mean, he throws the same receivers as Steve did. So, therefore, I mean, he already has different matchups that he's worked with and, you know, timing and all that stuff, working with certain guys. Mm-hmm. And the cool thing about it now, too, is there's no bias. Now these guys can go out there and earn the ball. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Because he has no favorite receiver, you know, in game time. Practice is one thing, but game time is totally a different thing. So, therefore, I mean, it's like the board is totally clean, you know, for the wide receivers and running backs. Now you got to earn this respect. And, you know, another thing, too, is adjustment with offensive linemen and stuff like that, you know. The offensive linemen now, they got to switch their attitude of, like, this is our man, this is who we have to protect, you know. And I think they're going to be very successful. I do honestly believe that this young man has been preparing for it for a long time. And since he didn't get the starting job from the very beginning, he's hungry.
Yeah.
He's got a point to prove.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think that was one of the more interesting things that he said this week when he spoke to the media on Tuesday. You know, somebody said, what has been the biggest adjustment for you, even in just these past few days, being the guy now, being the starter? And he said, well, now I have Steve's receivers. That's what he said point blank. So now, you know, in practice, he's taking the reps with the ones, Justice Ross Simmons and Darryl Gill and Jonte Cook. And I think he will need some time to adjust. I think just as we were talking about, Steve Angeli was a different guy in week 4 than he was in week 1. I think the same will be the case for Rickie Collins. He's going to need some time to, I think, grow into that role, to feel comfortable in that role. The Rickie Collins that we see this week is not going to be the same Rickie Collins that we see in November. And I think it's important to keep that in mind. But for all of the, I guess, uncertainty that it brings, I think you bring up a good point, Mungro, in what you said about the fact that other teams, this is an adjustment for them as well, right? Because Syracuse football, pretty much now all the tape you have on them through the first 4 games of the season, aside from a couple of snaps, is kind of irrelevant. And I think that can give them an advantage in a way.
I think it will give them an advantage in that. And, you know, with a young man stepping into Steve's shoes, it's like, you know, it's, you know, for Collins right now to step in Steve's shoes, it's very big for the simple fact that Steve's going to heal next year. You know, it's going to take 1 whole year. So you're talking about a quarterback battle then, like, it's going to be unbelievable. You know what I mean?
So weird.
Yeah, it's going to be very weird. So this man wants to totally take this very, very personal and keep this not – he wants to get out of reach. So he doesn't want to have no competition with Steve no more. He wants to show that he's the SU quarterback and his job is secured. And that's going to be very interesting to see what happens.
Especially considering that everything we've heard from Fran is that these two have a really good relationship off the field, you know, and they're watching film together and they've done all these things all season long that, like, you have to imagine that's an interesting task to navigate in a friendship.
No. And Steve, I just imagine Steve's going to be on the sidelines coaching them, helping them out, and, you know, Collins is going to ask him for, okay, what do you think about this? And they're going to be good close teammates. So it's going to be very, very, very interesting, like I said, in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I'm happy that you brought that up, Mungro, because I think that's where some fans' minds went immediately, right? Both of these guys now are going to have multiple years of eligibility left. Steve Angeli is going to, you know, hopefully be back for spring practice, like Fran Brown said. All of a sudden, it really does matter what Rickie does in his last 2/3 of the season
100%.
in terms of if Rickie keeps the job, if there's another quarterback battle next year, if Steve walks right back into his old job, right? I think that's going to be really interesting to see kind of take shape as this season goes on. But I think that Steve, like we're saying, is going to be really impactful to Rickie's growth here. Fran Brown said, you know, he's going to act like a graduate assistant. He's going to be at every meeting, at every practice, at every game. And that's important for Steve, too, to kind of keep his mind sharp and keep his mentality good and healthy as his recovery goes along, because I think that can be really hard for an athlete going through that.
Yeah, I mean, anytime what he's doing, like I said, he's been getting momentum every single time, and to go down like that in a big game, and the future's ahead of him, it totally sucks. It totally sucks because he worked very hard of learning the playbook in a short amount of time. But it's going to make him more hungry, though. So it's going to be, to see both those, seeing Steve coaching Collins on the sidelines, that's going to be very beneficial the whole time.
I completely agree. I have to give Angeli some credit because, to be fair, of course, when that statement comes out, he's going to be like, I'm rallying behind my brothers now. But that is a lot harder said than done. And I think some people don't understand that. I really mean that. As a former athlete, man, it's like to go from working your entire life, ultimately, to achieve this one goal of being the starting quarterback. You get it. You're doing a phenomenal job, and then because of something entirely out of your control, you lose it. It's really tough to just go out there and say, even if it's a guy who you really love and respect, hey, I'm going to support you and ultimately let you live out my dream for the rest of the year. So I appreciate that. The other overarching point when I hear all of you speak is I think, thank God, and everything happens for a reason, because imagine that this happened last year and Kyle McCord got injured.
Can't even think
Where
about
would we even be right now?
Can't even think about it.
You know what I'm saying?
Probably would have this show here.
Oh my! I mean, we would certainly have a lot to discuss, because I think the fact that they even had two quarterbacks who had this tight of a battle is so lucky, and there are not a lot of college football programs that had that tight of a battle going into the year. But the one thing that is different, I think, about now Collins' opportunity versus Angeli is, you mentioned, and I agree with you, Collins is not going to be the same quarterback we see now as he will be 4 weeks into his role as a starter. But here's the problem. He doesn't have a Colgate-UConn game to prep.
Yeah. No.
Come on. It's going to be a totally different kind of experience for him, and he has to learn faster.
He's in the fire right away.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think that where you, I guess, worry for Collins is what you said, right? He doesn't have that time to adjust. I think everything that we heard from the coaches in August when they were picking one of these two to be the starter, which did end up being Steve, was that it really came down to off-the-field demeanor more than anything. I think that the coaches really like Collins' raw talent, his raw athletic ability, his arm strength. I mean, Nunzio Campanelli was out there saying to us this week that he has one of the best arms of anyone I've ever seen, ever coached, and he's obviously coached guys that have gone on to the NFL. His mobility is good on the ground. Like, all of the physical traits are there. I think that they just went with Angeli from the jump because he just had more of that mature leadership role, right? You knew he was going to be the facilitator of the offense, and he was going to take control of that role. Now, obviously, Collins has no choice but to do that. But I just think that original decision came down to more off-the-field stuff than it did really on-the-field stuff.
But another thing too, though, and now Collins is taking this role. We need a backup for Collins. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is football. You don't know when this stuff's going to happen, and hopefully our backup quarterback for Collins is good too as well, because you just never know. And that's what I mean. That's why hopefully Collins has been preparing for the starting job this whole time, because next man up, and that's how it works in this sport.
And that's the one thing we were talking about is, like, he like every opportunity he's been on the field, he's basically been coming in cold, right? But, like, he's had touchdowns on, like, his first possessions of the games coming in. So that's a good sign to see from him. But I think in the sense of when you say how lucky are we to kind of have this situation where we have a Collins to immediately fall back on, I don't know if it's luck. It kind of just feels like Fran Brown and that mentality he had coming in and that attention to detail and him stressing that. He kind of looks like a genius at this point in the season now.
He does, and I think to your point, Fran Brown got really lucky that Kyle McCord, nothing happened to Kyle McCord last year. You know what I mean?
He was almost like last year in that sense. Like, that's the interesting part.
If Kyle McCord would have gotten hurt in week 4 last year, the entire story of last season would have been completely different. So you kind of know that Fran Brown and the coaching staff looked at that last year, said, okay, we took a risk. We got really lucky. Can't do that again.
Let's create a more comfortable situation.
Right. But Mungro brings up the rest of the depth chart, and that's something that the coaches have talked about kind of figuring out this week. Nunzio Campanelli said, it was a good lesson for those guys, right? Some of who are freshmen, sophomore, to be like, wow, okay, all of a sudden I'm right in the thick of it here. I could be the backup now.
Exactly.
I think from what we've heard, they haven't solidified anything yet. The depth chart this week said Luke Carney or Jakari Williams. Luke Carney, the true freshman out of Texas, but they really like Carney, and we did see him appear in that it was the UConn game, the Colgate game
with
when
Collins,
yes, and he had the rushing touchdown.
Sure did.
One play, one touchdown.
Not bad numbers.
How electric is that?
I know.
What a stat line.
So we'll see what happens. But behind Collins,
retire.
it's certainly going to be
Retire on that note.
That's what Steve Angeli said. He was like, I told him. He was like, that's so lucky. So
No, it really is. I have a question for you guys. Does anyone sitting here at this table think there's any chance that Collins could come in and blow Angeli's performance out of the water? Does anyone think that's a possibility?
Feels like a scary question to answer.
I would love to see that. I would love to see that, but I mean, realistically, the man does not have much playing time, and it's going to take some time. It's going to take some time, and I think there may be some adjustment with his fans too, as well, of not being so harsh on him. Again, he didn't play the first couple. I mean, he got a little spot up duties, but he hasn't been out there from the start to finish. And this week, we'll see.
I think it's a different story if you're following the Colgate game than you are the Clemson game. I think the Clemson game is a tough act to follow. I think if he's coming in, Steve Angeli got hurt in the Colgate game, I think there's a lot bigger of a window for this to be like a star-studded performance. But like Syracuse fans reached a high with that Clemson game, and it's going to take leveling that up to, I think, really outdo
Just
Angeli.
beat Duke.
Yeah.
I mean, if he beats, we win this game coming up very shortly. I mean, I think in a convincing way.
Yeah.
Not a close game, but in a very convincing way, and he has good numbers. I think the fans will really, be behind him and support him.
Yeah.
I do agree that this week feels important, even just for himself, right?
Yeah.
To set the tone for the offense in his first week as a starter. Honestly, I'm going to take the optimistic route and say that I do think it's possible that, come November, come game 10, 11, 12, Rickie Collins, you do see the raw athletic ability there and say maybe the ceiling and the upside is higher than Steve Angeli. We won't know because our sample size of Angeli was so small, but I guess it's just worth pointing out that Steve Angeli was a guy that had never been a starter before. He was a guy who came in with more experience than Collins, of course, played in some important games, the national semifinal among them and the college football playoff last year for Notre Dame, but Steve Angeli was not used to being a starter either. That was a role he had kind of adopted these last few games. He did not have a ton of experience, a ton of playing time. Neither does Rickie Collins. I guess we'll see which direction he takes that.
There is no doubt about it. Well, listen, Mongrose said just beat Duke. It really is that simple, isn't it? So let's talk about Duke a little bit.
It's going to be tough.
It sure is. Hey, it's in front of a sellout crowd, so I think that's something that's going in the Orange's favor. 42,000 fans, somewhere around that number. Duke is a team that's 2-2, and quite honestly, they've had sort of a strange start to the year. Some weird losses, some impressive wins. They're coming off of a 45-33 win against NC State, and the first thing that sticks out to me is that's a high score.
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit before when we were doing some of our TV hits for today, but these are two offenses. Now, albeit Syracuse's is a different one now with Rickie Collins, to get that disclaimer out of the way, but two offenses that are top 10 in the country in terms of total passing yards. Both of these offenses average, more than 300 passing yards per game. So you see those outputs there from Duke. In their two wins, they scored 45 points in both of them. In a loss to Illinois, which is a top 25 team, they put up 19. And against Tulane, they lost 34-27. You know this team can score. You know this team is going to test you defensively. And if you're Syracuse, I think you have to be prepared for that. You have to know that there's a good chance this comes down to the defense again.
I completely agree. And I think one thing that stuck out to me this week, you want to talk about the offense, we'll definitely talk about that. But let's be fair in saying that Duke's head coach had a lot of praise for Syracuse. There were some really, really nice things said there about the way that Fran Brown has been able to elevate the program. It's not to say that that's anything that we haven't heard before, because we certainly have, but you're starting to see this theme of coaches who are really respecting what Syracuse has built here. And with people taking Syracuse as a serious opponent comes a certain level of prep that you, I think, have to do as Syracuse, knowing that everyone's taking you seriously. No one's considering this an easy game anymore, is my point.
Right. Different mentality in the preparation. You're not necessarily the underdog like you have been in
not
years
really.
past. One other thing that Manny Diaz kind of touched on in that statement where he was talking about the progress Fran Brown has made with the program is he talked about playing in a tough environment and coming up to the Dome, but he also referred to going up north. And that's nice to hear too, because Fran's been so focused on making the North in general and promoting football in the North and the recruits that come out of the North. So kind of hearing Manny address that aspect of it and really seeing Syracuse as a pinnacle place in the North for football was nice to hear too, I thought.
I agree. We're going to talk about Duke for a couple more minutes here. Rachel is actually going to get up and roam a little bit, so if anyone has any questions, now is going to be a good time in a couple minutes to ask those questions. In the meantime, we'll go back to Duke. We'll come back to you in a couple minutes if that sounds good.
Sounds good.
Syracuse is opening up as a 5.5-point underdog. Fair or unfair?
I think the line was very dependent on. All right. Take a deep breath. I think the line was extremely dependent on SU just lost their starting quarterback. I do not think that they would have been underdogs at home coming off of a win over Clemson if that was not the case. I guess you have to set it there because this is a Syracuse offense that is now unknown, unproven, and completely different.
100%.
At the same time, has Syracuse, beaten higher caliber opponents? Yes, they won over Clemson. They were competitive against Tennessee, and then obviously UConn, a team that sort of gave them a run for their money as well. When I look at Duke, and they lost to a top 25 team in Illinois in a sort of brutal fashion, and then they lost to Tulane. Duke's an unproven team to me, right? Your only win on there in terms of in-conference is NC State, and NC State not really one of the top teams in the ACC this year. So I'm not surprised that they're an underdog, but I certainly think that's going to give Fran Brown and Rickie Collins and everybody involved some extra motivation.
This is why to me football is such a weird.
Go ahead. You said it totally very clearly right there. I mean, honestly, not a proven offense.
Well,
you got to prove yourself.
100%.
So even though it's a home game, you still got to prove yourself, and it's not proven yet. We'll see very shortly.
This is why, to me, football is such a weird sport because you say it. It's like most of these teams are 4 games through the season, and don't you still feel like there are a lot of teams where you really have no idea are they good or bad? Is Clemson good, bad, or mediocre?
Yeah, no,
is Syracuse good,
because
mediocre?
Illinois,
I don't know.
Didn't Illinois just get blown out?
By Indiana, yes.
63 to 7 or something.
Yep.
And they were a ranked team, early on in the year. So
top 10 team, yeah.
Yeah, top 10 team, and we don't even have any looks at all, So let us play behind, have us the underdogs, and just got to prove people wrong.
Yeah, I think it's worth pointing out that, for the praise that Manny Diaz had for Fran Brown, he's also really trying to rebuild the Duke program. They have a really interesting situation if you kind of look at the picture of the ACC with their quarterback, Darian Mensah. He is currently, I mentioned that, really up-tempo, pass-heavy offense. He's 3rd in the country in passing yards right now with up over 1,300 already. And I think that's a really interesting discussion point because they played Tulane already this season. Darian Mensah had a really attention-grabbing transfer from Tulane this offseason. And Duke allegedly paid him like $8 million in NIL to come to Duke. And then they go out and they play Tulane and they lose against Tulane. College football these days, man.
$8 million will go a long way for me. I'm going to say it.
$8 million for 1 year of your time.
1 year.
You can sign me up. My goodness.
Sign all of us up.
Yeah, right?
For $8 million.
You could sign all 3 of us up for $8 million, and we'll split it 3 ways. No, I think it is really interesting that you bring that up because to me this strikes me as 2 head coaches with a similar idea of what they want to do for their program, right? 2 coaches who are out trying to prove something, 2 quarterbacks who this game feels very dependent on. And I'll say it, I think one thing about this game you go into it thinking is it's going to matter which team has a better offensive performance and a better quarterback, particularly with this matchup.
I agree, but I will say, in terms of just taking some of the pressure off the offense, because we're hyping up this Rickie Collins situation so much, and deservedly so, I think a lot of this is going to come down to the Syracuse defense as well, a defense that you saw improve against Clemson. And that's why I'm not ready to throw out the Clemson results, even though, they lost Angeli.
Yeah.
Clemson might not be a good team this year. You saw the defense.
They got confidence.
They got confidence. They were tackling better. They were more urgent. You saw a lot of things cleaned up defensively last week.
We're going to actually go out to the audience. We have a question. So let's head outside to Rachel Culver with a question.
Hi guys, I'm here with Emma, and Emma has a question about Fran Brown that she wanted to ask you guys.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, hi guys, doing a great job up there. My question was, I feel like last season with Fran's first season as head coach, it was a lot of establishing what does a Fran Brown football team look like for SU, and how is that going to change what the SU football program used to be, and what is it going to start looking like in the future? And so I'm wondering, in this second season, do we think we're seeing a more established and grounded Fran Brown football team, or do you think there's a few more years of growth before we kind of get a more concrete look at what an SU football season looks like with Fran Brown?
Well, first and foremost, I think when Fran came here, he made sure that everybody's going to be accountable on and off the field. And I think that's something really big. And, going to the second season now, he's still preaching the same thing on and off the field with the players being accountable, going to class, doing the right things, not getting in trouble. And so as this keeps sinking into these young men's heads, he's just going to build momentum. And what I like about Fran, he don't play that. Very, very simple. He don't play that. And when I mean that, you can use it as you want to say it, but he doesn't play that. And I think the players respect him very much for that. And he's a straight shooter, and that's all you ask from your coaches. Don't bullshit you. Tell me the truth. And Fran is a straight shooter. You do this correctly, this is what's going to happen. If you do this wrong, this is what's going to happen. So I think what he's building, I think is happening now, and we're seeing this live. And I don't think he's going to deviate from the plan at all.
I think that, from the moment we met Fran Brown last year, he talked this big talk, right? He totally talked this whole thing that he was going to turn the program around and dart and all of that. But then last year he also walked the walk, right?
Yes.
They won 10 games. They were very relevant nationally in terms of knocking off Miami at the end of the season. And I think this year with a young team, with a lot of turnover, with a lot of guys gone from last year, everybody sort of held their breath a little bit to say, okay, can he now do that a second time, especially with a younger group of players? Obviously, you can't draw any conclusions through 4 weeks, but at least that Clemson win, to me, pointed out that we are going to get more of the same in terms of backing it up, right?
Yeah, I'll keep it brief, but I would say at this point I feel that the program that he's developing is established. I'm a big believer in you can't necessarily believe what you hear, you have to believe what you see. And I believe what I've seen from him, at least so far. I thought he did a great job establishing an identity for this program last year. I think this year he has continued to build on it, and I think that the entire university would be silly to not do everything that they can to re-sign him again. Because let's face it, as far as college athletics is concerned, football is king. You have to have somebody here who's able to lead that ship. Any other questions in the audience before we wrap things up?
I do have a question from someone here who doesn't necessarily want to go on camera, but they're wondering a little bit more in depth about Rickie Collins. And do we think Rickie is going to place an emphasis on also running the ball? Is that part of his game from what you guys are aware of Rickie, or you think we're all learning that together here?
I do think that Rickie is a more mobile quarterback than Steve Angeli was. I think a lot of what we've heard about him is his ability to extend plays on the ground, to use his legs. But I also think that's something that the SU coaching staff was really aware of this week. When Fran Brown spoke, when Nunzio Campanelli spoke, both of them made sure to point out, saying hey, everybody's talking about Rickie, and his mobility on the ground, but this is a guy that can really throw the ball too, and I think is going to fit well into that pass-heavy offense that we've seen from Jeff Nixon through, a year and a few games. So I think that they seem to think, at least, that Collins is going to surprise a lot of people with his ability to facilitate a pass-heavy offense as well.
Well, it's saying that too now, with a guy being more athletic than Steve, the offensive lineman's got to develop a different approach to the game. If he's going to scramble, then they got to be alert at all times.
Definitely.
Not being downfield or being downfield, stuff like that. When it's to pass block or run block. So there's going to be some adjustments with that, and it's going to take a little bit of time. But hopefully they could get that going very well, and hopefully it just comes naturally.
Yeah, I think he has some legs. I think he was always advertised as a dual-threat quarterback, and there is a real possibility that you're going to see a little bit more of a run game. Because Angeli, in my eyes, didn't have that at all. I thought that he really felt comfortable being in the pocket, where I think with Collins, I'm sort of split 50-50. I do think that we could see over the course of the next 4 or let's say 5 weeks that he was the one that had more raw talent and athleticism. At the same time, I think that he takes more risks. I think you could see more interceptions with him. I think I really do.
We don't want to hear that.
I'm sorry, but it's true. I think he's going to be more of a high risk, high reward type of quarterback, but I'm a high risk, high reward kind of girl. So we'll see what ends up happening with that. Time for one more question in the audience if we have one.
All right, we are here with Nicole, who does have a question.
Absolutely. I ask this one all the time. Right now, in this point in time, if you were the person in charge, if you were the Fran Brown, so to speak, what would be your next immediate move given the state of the team right now?
Great question. Great question.
I'll let you guys answer that.
Munger's like, I'm going to take a second to think about that one. Right now, I guess my immediate goal would be finding out who my next backup quarterback is going to be. I think that if this entire experience showed you anything, it's that you have to have the next man ready to go. In this particular situation, that was obvious because there was a battle at the quarterback position. It felt like Rickie Collins or Steve Angeli were two guys who were as ready to go as you could be at the collegiate level with limited experience. Right now, they don't necessarily have that. They're 3-option, they're 4-option. There's a lot of questions and a lot of uncertainty, and I think that in a situation like this, particularly when it comes to quarterbacks, you have to make a decision and make it right. So whoever that backup quarterback is, I think that that quarterback should know, and honestly, I think that we should all know as media too.
Yeah, I agree that that's like the obvious, right? You want that stability, I guess, to transfer over from quarterback to quarterback, and Fran Brown has to kind of see that and feel that out through these next 3 games. But I also think defensively, right? This was a defense that had a lot of question marks through 3 games. They played well against Clemson, but if I'm Fran Brown, I need to see that continue. I think if you're looking at the team as a whole in terms of depth and talent and experience, getting a little ahead of ourselves, but if you're hitting the portal, you know, this upcoming off season, I think a lot of it is defense, is linebackers, is defensive line, is, you know, some of that secondary. That's the stuff that you need to shore up because you've shown through over a year that you're going to be able to score with Jeff Nixon, right? So I think in terms of that defense, that's really always the area of question.
I think you guys said it very clearly. I mean, honestly, you know, as a coach, I mean, you just want to keep positive stuff with your team, and you know there's going to be times when things are not going your way, but you got to stay positive. And you know we've seen that every single game with Fran, and you just keep building on that. So you know, obviously your second string, your backups. I feel like the backups are the most important things to have.
I won't make us do predictions on the set, but do you guys think that Syracuse is going to win against Duke? Yes or no, and then we'll wrap it up and get out of here.
I think this is a game that they win. As long as Rickie Collins, as long as disaster doesn't strike for Rickie Collins, I should say, as long as he gets in there and, you know, feels comfortable and doesn't show a ton of hesitation into the second half, I definitely think this is a game that they can pull out.
So I just remember my running back coach, Gene Huey, would say to us, what are you going to do? Are you going to get out there and pee down your leg, or are you going to go out there and play?
What a beautiful piece of advice.
I'm just that's what he – this is professional coach, running back coach, Gene Huey. And he would say that. And he literally would, like, look you in the eye and say that to you. So I have that question for Rickie. What are you going to do? Are you going to go out there and ball, or are you going to pee on your leg?
And with that, Rachel, what do you think?
I got nothing. Nah, he just took the cake.
I mean, it's very simple. I mean, it's just very simple. Your next man up, he's ready to go. Let's go. Let's go, Rickie. Let's see what you're going to do. Or you're going to be just scared out there and fumbling the ball and all that. Take control of the offense, run the offense like how coach is designed to run, and just do it. Go out there and ball out.
Syracuse or Duke?
Syracuse.
Okay.
I think they do it.
I think it's pretty rare that we all feel this way, but I'm not going to say something that I don't believe just to balance the panel out. I really do think that Syracuse is going to win this game as well. I think that Syracuse, for the past few years, has been known for covering the spread, upsetting the odds, upsetting Vegas, and I'm going to bet on them to do that again. I want to take one brief moment and just thank everyone who took some time out of their day to come here and support us. It really means a lot to us to have each and every one of you here. Thank you so much to our sales department, to the directors and photographers behind the scene who really helped to set this up, to our news directors, Matt Safer, Sean Carroll, and beyond, to Apex Entertainment for having us here. This is a great venue, and I really hope that you guys have us back here again. And to everyone on this panel, Rachel Culver, Ashley Wenskoski, James Mungro, we always really appreciate your time. I'm Samantha Croston. This was the Orange Zone Podcast, and we are saying so long. We will see you back here when the next big thing happens. Thanks for joining us.